My name is Mike Smith, and I'm president of the brokerage. And today I have with me Cheryl Hopkin, who is the CEO of the brokerage, and she is also the co-founder of this company, a 44-year-old insurance marketing organization. And the other really neat thing about this is Cheryl is also my mother-in-law. Yes. And so we're here today to share with you a very fun story about how this company grew to where it is today. So Cheryl, there's a lot of stuff that we can talk about today. But I know Ross, God rest his soul, would love to be here and be a part of this interview.
He would.
But you get to tell the story. So why don't you start out by telling us, back in the 70s, Ross comes home one day.
Well, no, actually it started in May of 1975, and we were married on May 17th. And I was working at El Centro College downtown. And I was going to school at night, and he was actually a rep with Ranger Insurance Company. And so we had no money back then at all. I mean, we really didn't, but we got married, and he couldn't even afford, he said, I can't even afford a diamond, so all you're gonna get is a gold band, and I wore that for 11 years. But anyway, we went through the summer and really really doing really well until one day in October, and this was October of 75, he came home. It was on a Friday, and he said, Cheryl, I'm done. And I went, what do you mean you're done? And he said, I'm just not, he said, I really don't want to work for anybody anymore. I want to start my own company. And I went, what? What does that mean? And he said, well, it means you will have to quit your job, quit school, and go to work and make some real money so that you can support us, so that we can start this new company. And that was the day that the seed was actually planted. Mm-hmm. And so after that, he went on, and I did end up getting a really good job at an oil and gas company and made money enough to support us. And he went on, and he got his contracts, and he had been in the business for years. And so he had some really good people in both the insurance industry that wanted to really take a chance on him. And so he got his contracts. He would travel and get his agent base, and I don't mean staying in a hotel and entertaining. I mean, he would call and say, can I come stay with you? And we've got to talk this business proposition. Yeah. We couldn't even afford for him to stay in a motel or anything. So anyway, he did that, and for several months, and by 76, the brokerage was really starting to take off, and I think at some point in that year, we got the name, and we got officially the name and the logo. We had to get all of that, but anyway, he would come home. We didn't even have a typewriter. So I think one of his friends loaned us their typewriter.
Oh my gosh.
And so he would come home to that little apartment every night, and I'd come home from work, and we would sit and we would work on the brokerage till we just passed out, and so that's the way it all started. I mean, that was in 76. We didn't actually incorporate until July of 77, but I was the first secretary. Yeah. And he eventually got everyone who remembered the brokerage in the beginning remembered Sue.
Yep.
And he, at one point, I think she was working for General American, and he at one point said, Cheryl's really burning out here. Yeah. So can you come and do you want to come and work for me? He said, I'm trying to get this company off the ground. And anyway, she loved Ross enough. She took a chance on him. So
he was just a silver-tongued devil.
Oh my God!
He sold you, and then he turned around and sold Sue.
My life changed in a matter of one night, and
oh my gosh!
From what I thought it was going to be, but it took a lot of work, and we really. I mean, it was. I remember those nights. There was not going out for food or anything. I mean, it was, do you want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? You want scrambled eggs? I mean, that was
Yeah.
We had no money, but it was a labor of love in the beginning. It really was.
He told me stories. He said that the first contract the brokerage had was with a company that was called American Trust Administrators.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It was a small group product.
That's right. Yeah.
And that was it. And he came from a group background.
Yes,
General
he did.
American, and he would have his buddies and they would discuss problems, and I can recall him even telling me about how even in '65 he thought Medicare was going to put everybody out of business.
Yes, he did.
And
yes.
that just started a whole new industry, really.
Right, right.
But he would take the quotes that he would generate on the street, knocking doors, just out there, in his car, knocking doors all over Texas, and bring home everything and stick it in your pile and say,
yes.
What? Get these quotes done?
Get these quotes done or do these presentations, and I wouldn't even know what I would be typing, but he would sit there with me and tell me everything to type, exactly how to do it, and that's how it all started. I mean, and then he'd go out the next day and do his presentation, or
it basically was just all group health insurance in the beginning.
Yeah, it was in the beginning. It was.
So we'll get to where we are now, but gosh, just one product, and it was a different world back then.
It was a totally different world. I mean, I don't even remember that anymore. It was so long ago, and
there were no industry trips or cruises or anything at that point.
Not at that time, no, because we were just that came later, but it wasn't. It wasn't then. It was, but you know what? He was such a good guy that everyone loved him. I can remember that. Everyone loved him. And everyone who met me always talked about what a wonderful person he was. And they wanted to do business with him on whichever end, whether it was the carrier side or the agent side or whatever, he just attracted people that way, so.
Yeah, and the seed was planted. So his reputation in this industry was impeccable.
Impeccable, it really was, yeah.
I never met anybody that said, well, Ross Hopkins screwed me around. That just wasn't ever a part of the conversation.
When he made an agreement, it was a handshake agreement, and he stuck by it, so he always did. And those were good old days. I mean, sometimes even later, after we did get a little bit of money, we'd look back on those days and we'd go, sometimes I think we were happier back then.
A lot can be said about that.
Yeah.
Well, so y'all were in an apartment, you had your typewriter, he's on the road, you're working, and it's just new marriage, a lot of challenges.
New marriage, and I think at some point we probably talked about having kids, and we did try for about 10 years, but we never could for those 10 years, and but I think there was just a lot of stress involved, I think that was a lot of it right there, just the stress.
Yeah, I could see it. Well, so then y'all moved to Highland Village.
Well, we moved to Highland Village, I want to say, after he started getting well, I can't really put this on tape, so because it could come back to haunt me. But when he started getting some agents under his belt and everything, we did buy a house. I think it was $69,000 we bought that house for, and we lived out there for how many years? 30. It was 43. Yeah, 43 years. Yeah. So 42 years, I guess, but. Yeah, so anyway, we moved to Highland Village, and then he was we both were having to commute into Dallas because I was working in Dallas, and so was he. So
the first office was in Richardson, 75, Campbell, somewhere around in there.
Yeah, it was way over there. I don't know why we moved to Highland Village, but we were way far away from our offices. I was down off of Central Expressway, and then he went even further out, into Richardson. So.
Well, that's why y'all never had kids in the beginning, because
we never saw each other. Really.
Well, so it's probably the early '80s about this time. at this point, y'all might have been making a little bit of money, but were you still kind of in the back of your mind thinking, what the heck am I doing? Is this ever going to take off?
Oh, back then, he always made sure that Sue got her paycheck. He always did. But we would go without paychecks. And, there were times, with the bills you had to pay, and, he just couldn't draw a paycheck. There wasn't enough money to. And, and then the business, there would be peaks and valleys. You remember that when you came to work. That was still happening then.
Oh, yeah.
And, gosh, we just hated those times when we were in the valleys, but loved it when we were peaking.
Right,
so,
absolutely.
the money was not consistent at all. And later on, even Sue had to give up her paycheck sometimes just so that we could support them.
Really?
Other employees, yeah. So as we gained more employees.
When was that? About when did y'all start adding, I guess, Jenny and others?
Yeah, when did Jenny, let's see, I was going to, Sue carried it for several years, but then at some point Jenny came on board. Oh, Janet, I think, came on board.
Janet Sanders.
Janet, and then Jenny. And those three were the three that really ran the company while he went out and got the sales. So, yeah.
Well, in the 80s, the group health insurance business was really booming, and there were rates that were like $75, $100, and
Right, yeah.
everybody was making money. It was a different world back then.
Right.
Ross mentioned to me one night, he said that a lot of the people that they worked with were just employers and the employees, but they all had spouses and kids, and sometime around the late 80s is when the individual major medical started creeping into the brokerage with a company called Washington National.
Washington National.
A new chapter.
Yes, there's a new chapter, and I think that's who we had our first trip with was Washington National.
The Winner's Circle.
The Winner's Circle. That's right. You're right. But yeah, I think that I forget. I don't know that Belinda came on board then, but she came on board. When did she come on board?
I think it was 95, or about 95, somewhere around in there.
Was
94.
it 95? Yeah, because next year she'll be celebrating her 15th anniversary, I think. Or is it
20.
20?
Yeah.
Oh, 20. So
Yeah.
so this is, so 2010 would have been.
Yeah. Somewhere right in. So let me ask you though about Washington National, because to me this is where things started really getting good. Obviously it was a good contract. It was a great individual major medical plan, but there were other types of general agencies like the brokerage that were also doing very well, whether it was Sue Wilson up in Oklahoma City.
Right. That's how we got to know them so well back then.
And a lot of y'all that were on these Winner's Circles trips got to talking and thinking maybe we need to form a group that would help to protect us.
That's right.
And that gave birth to the Brokers Health Insurance Network.
That's exactly right, Bahini. That was exactly what gave birth to it. And all of those original people were all part of that Winner's Circle. But Bahini did a lot to gain contracts for everybody, and they really, that really was. Who was I know Ross was one of the founders, but who else was?
Let's see.
I was trying to.
It would have been, the original people, Irv Shaw, Kentucky.
Oh, yeah.
Bob Picard,
Oh, yeah.
Pennsylvania.
I know, yeah.
Joanne Shields,
Yes.
out of New Hampshire. There was Art Jetter.
I was going to say, I bet
Nebraska.
Art was part of that too.
Bob Meyer, up in Missouri.
So they were all a part of that original. Okay.
And then they started bringing on others like Bill Perkins up in Washington, Worden Brown out of California. Before you know it, this became an exclusive club of health insurance marketing organizations.
It was, yes.
And from there were a lot of other companies that approached the network to say, hey, we want y'all to distribute our products.
Right.
And they were national contracts versus
right.
today, which are very regional in nature.
Right.
So it's
Yeah,
kind of
that's
a
right.
different world.
Right.
And in that same time frame, as I recall what Ross told me, is that he recognized there was a lot of business insurance opportunities for life insurance. So y'all started a life department back in the late 80s.
We did, yes, and that was, yeah, that we really, I don't think had intended to go in that direction, but we did, and then at some point, I think, when was TMA for?
In the mid-90s.
Yeah, National Marketing Organization.
And then Kathy Barnes. Kathy Barnes kind of came in.
right.
She helped out starting the life
She did.
department.
She started out with it, and then it's gone through a lot of changes. But I think we really, Bert was the one when he came on board with it.
Bert Ehrman.
Bert Ehrman,
Yeah.
yes.
And then he brought Sherry Kelson on board in the mid-90s.
Yes, he
About the
did.
same time Belinda came on board.
That's right. They're both about a year apart, I think. So they came on together. And I think about that time, sometime in the 90s. We ended up having our children in '85 and '86, and then in the 90s, Ross told me, he said, "Now it's time for you to come to work for me." And that's when I got involved in that. But I mean, really got involved, because I had been kind of on the outside of it, and
raising kids,
going
and soccer practice.
And he would come home and we would still talk. We always, I mean, when you came into our family, we were always talking business, always. We were always talking the brokerage, day and night.
Yep.
And, but when I got in there, he said, "I want you to work in every department. I want you to learn everything." And so I did. That's when I really kind of got in there. I met Belinda, and Sherry didn't come on till later, but so Belinda, yeah, she was there before Sherry.
So you're touching on something here that I wanted to get into. Ross had a vision, and that was his strength. And he kind of had a way of knowing things that may happen and develop into the future. And obviously, if he wanted you to touch on every part of the brokerage, it was for a reason. What do you think?
Well, I think looking back on it now, Ross was a visionary, and he did. He could see the trends in the industry, and he would adjust according to the trends he was seeing. And but one thing I didn't really understand why he wanted me to learn the business until much later, but there came a point. So through the 90s, I worked there, but what were you there when I? Okay.
In 93.
93. Okay. So, but 2001 is when he finally said, "Cheryl, I want you to learn everything Sue does, everything." And so I spent a year training under her, and she did all of the payroll. I mean, she made sure I knew how to do everything. And then she passed away in 2002.
Yeah. She was like his work wife, so to speak.
She was.
They could almost know what each other were thinking and finish each other's sentences.
They did.
And I was so impressed with Sue, and I was also scared of her.
I was scared of her. I was scared of her.
She was the sweetest lady.
She was.
But you knew when she said something, she meant it, and she was consistent. And I think that, Ross's vision and Sue's consistency, your almost volunteer work is really the three-legged stool that kind of built the brokerage.